Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where it's all geek to me. There's a story that has survived for nearly 3,000 years. A man goes to war. He wins. And then he tries to go home. Simple, right? Except it isn't. Because in Homer's Odyssey, getting home is not a straight line. Odysseus doesn't simply leave Troy, point his ship towards Ithaca, and arrive safely at his front door. He encounters monsters, giants, sorceresses, temptations, storms, and entire islands where he can forget that home exists at all. And maybe that's why the Odyssey still speaks to us. Because sometimes the hardest part of a journey isn't discovering where you want to go. It's remembering where home is. And I think America is on its own Odyssey. Not because America's perfect, it never has been, but because our country has spent years wandering away from one of its most important founding principles, pluralism. The idea that we can be different, deeply different, and still belong to the same political community. That we can disagree about religion, and morality, and politics, culture, and even the meaning of life, without believing that everyone who disagrees with us must be conquered, converted, silenced, or expelled. And that is not weakness, that is the experiment. And like Odysseus, we have encountered a few monsters along the way. First, there's the Cyclops, the one-eyed giant, a creature with a single perspective, one eye, one way of seeing, one version of reality. And in the Odyssey, the Cyclops is dangerous, not merely because he's large. He's dangerous because he has no interest in seeing beyond himself. He's trapped inside his own perspective. And one of the great dangers of authoritarianism is that it does the same thing to a society. It gives a nation one eye, one leader, one truth, one acceptable identity, and one story. And once society becomes convinced that there's only one way to see the world, well, everyone outside that single vision becomes a threat. The Cyclops doesn't negotiate with the stranger. He eats him. And authoritarianism has a similar appetite. It consumes difference. It consumes dissent. It consumes the idea that the other person might be wrong, but still human. And then there are the giants, the Laestrygonians, a society of powerful, so powerful and overwhelming that Odysseus loses almost his entire fleet. And perhaps this is where we should be careful with Christian nationalism. Not because Christianity is inherently the enemy. It isn't. Christianity is one of the great intellectual, moral, and cultural traditions of Western civilization. Millions of Americans are Christians, and they have every right to bring their values into public life. But Christian nationalism is something different, because the moment a religious identity says this nation belongs to us more than it belongs to everyone else, we've begun to replace the American experiment with something else. The United States was not founded as a nation belonging to one church. It was founded as a nation where people of different cultures, different churches, and people of no church could live together under a government that did not require them to share a single faith. And that's not an attack on religion. It is the protection of religious freedom. And this is where pluralism really matters. Because pluralism does not mean believing that all ideas are equally true. It means recognizing that the government cannot force every citizen to live according to one group's definition of truth. The giants of religious nationalism want to convince us that America must become one thing, one faith, one culture, one identity. But America has never been one thing. America has always been a conversation between many things. And then there are the sirens, beautiful voices calling sailors toward destruction. And honestly, if you've ever spent 5 minutes on social media, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The sirens of modern politics don't necessarily sing beautiful songs. Sometimes they scream. Sometimes they rage. Sometimes they tell you that the entire country is being destroyed by the people who live on the other side of the political aisle. They tell you your enemies are evil. Your opponents are stupid. Your side is pure. And you are the only one who can save us. That is the song of the demagogue. And the dangerous thing about demagoguery is that it often begins with something true. There really are problems. There really are injustices. There really are corrupt institutions, and there really are people who abuse power. But then the demagogue comes along and says, I alone can fix it. And that should make us nervous, because democracy is built on the assumption that no single person is wise enough, virtuous enough, or trustworthy enough to be given unlimited power. That is why we have checks and balances. That is why we have elections. And that is why we have courts. That's why there's also freedom of the press. And that is why we have opposition parties. That is why we have citizens who are allowed to be annoying. And believe me, Americans are exceptionally good at being annoying. But sometimes the sirens are not loud. Sometimes they're comforting. Sometimes they're the voice that tells us, you don't have to think anymore. You already know who is right. You already know who is wrong. You already know which news sources to trust. You already know which people are evil, and you already know which people are stupid. And that brings us to Calypso. Calypso offers Odysseus something very tempting: a beautiful island, comfort, security, and the possibility of forgetting the struggle entirely. And I think your political echo chambers can become a modern Calypso, because the echo chamber is comfortable. It tells us that we are right. It surrounds us with people who agree with us. It confirms our assumptions, and it rewards our outrage. And eventually, we can become so comfortable inside our own little island that we stop wanting to go home. We forget that the real world is filled with people who do not think like us, people who vote differently, worship differently, live differently, love differently, read different books, watch different movies, and yet they're still our fellow citizens. The problem is that our political echo chambers can make the rest of the country feel like a foreign land, and eventually we begin to believe that the only people who truly belong in America are the people who already agree with us. But that's not home. That is an island. And the goal of the Odyssey is not to remain on the island. The goal is to go home. For Odysseus, home is Ithaca. For America, I think home is the idea that no one gets to own the entire country. Not the Christian, not the atheist, not the Republican, not the Democrat, not the progressive, not the conservative, not the billionaire, not the president, not the loudest person on television, not the person with the biggest following online. America is not supposed to belong to one of us. It's supposed to belong to all of us. And yes, that is messy. It is frustrating, it's inefficient, and it's full of people who are wrong, including me, and including you, and everybody watching this video. And that's okay, because democracy was never supposed to be the system where everyone agrees. It was supposed to be the system where we can disagree without destroying one another. The Odyssey is not a story about a man who returns to a home unchanged. Odysseus has been transformed by his journey. He has seen the monsters. He's endured the storms. He has been tempted to forget. And when he finally returns, he's not the same man who left. Maybe that is where the hope is for us. Because surviving the monsters should teach us something. The Cyclops should teach us the danger of seeing the world through only one eye. The giants should teach us that no ideology, religious or political, should be allowed to swallow the entire nation. The sirens should teach us to be suspicious of anyone who tells us that our enemies are not merely wrong, but less than human. And Calypso should teach us that comfort can become a prison when it convinces us never to leave our island. We're not going to agree about everything. We're probably not even going to agree about what I just said. And that's fine. That's the point. Pluralism is not the absence of conflict. It is the belief that conflict does not have to end in domination. And maybe America's journey home begins with something very simple. The realization that the person across from us is not necessarily a monster. They may be wrong. They may be ignorant. They may be frustrating. They may even be acting in ways that deserve condemnation. Because an explanation of behavior is never an exoneration of behavior. But they're still human. And if we forget that, then we've already begun to become the monsters we claim to be fighting. Odysseus spends years trying to get home. But the real question of the Odyssey is not simply, will he make it back to Ithaca? The question is, what will he become before he gets there? And maybe that's our question too. After all the monsters, after the storms, after the false promises, after the seductive voices telling us to hate our neighbors, what kind of country will we be when we finally find our way home? I hope we remember that America was never supposed to be a nation of one eye, or one faith, or one voice, or one political tribe. I hope we remember that the greatness of America has never been that we are all the same. The greatness of America is that we are not. And yet, we keep trying. We keep arguing. We keep failing, and we keep correcting ourselves. We keep sailing. And maybe the journey home is not about returning to some imaginary golden age that never truly existed. Maybe the journey home is about returning to the principles that were always supposed to guide us forward: liberty, pluralism, religious freedom, democracy, the messy, difficult, frustrating idea that we can share a country with people who do not share our worldview. Because home is not the place where everyone agrees with you. Home is the place where you learn how to live with the fact that they don't. And perhaps that is the final lesson of the Odyssey. The journey is long. The monsters are real. The temptations are powerful. But Ithaca is still there. And if we can remember where home is, maybe we can still find our way back. This has been Geek Philosophy, where it's all geek to me. And remember, don't just watch, think.
If you've been watching Geek Philosophy and thinking, you know what, I really should read some of these philosophy books, well, this is your sign. The Logos Philosophy Book Club makes it easy to start reading the great works of philosophy. Beautiful editions of books from thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, Nietzsche, Hume, Boethius, and so many more. And the best part, you don't have to read them alone. The Logos Philosophy Book Club gives you a community of people who are actually reading these books, thinking about these ideas, and discussing what they mean for the world we live in today. Because philosophy isn't just something that belongs in a classroom or in dusty old books. It's in the Matrix, it's in Star Trek, it's in superheroes, it's in politics, religion, science, and the choices we make every single day. So, if you want to join me in reading more philosophy, check out the Logos Philosophy Book Club using the link in the description below. And when you sign up, use my promo code Jeremy, that's Jeremy, for 15% off your subscription. And if you use my link and promo code, you'll be supporting Geek Philosophy while joining a community of people who believe that reading old books can still help us understand the way the modern world we live in works. So go check out Logos Philosophy Book Club, because the best way to understand the ideas shaping the world is to start reading the people who started the conversation. As always, don't just read, think.